Anyway, you want me to tell
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I go to breakfast this morning. My wife and I go to Salem's at least one time a week, maybe a couple of times a week. And of course, that's like going back to Ed Salem's when he was on the east side of Birmingham. You know,
Yeah.
his dad, when I was young, going to his dad's restaurant. And, you know, so I come in there and, hey, coach, and this conversation, so little old place that sort of fills up the room. And here lately, I walk in there and he said, now, when are we going to write that book? Everybody wants to know when you're going to write a book. You got these stories here and stories there. We just need to write a book. And I said, statute of limitations, man. There's a couple more going to have to leave before I talk about this stuff.
It's Wayne, right? Yeah, Wayne. Wayne. So I'm in there one morning and I'm sitting there with, I think it was a couple of Presbyterians. We were having a discussion about faith and religion and all that kind of stuff. And Wayne's over there making some coffee, and there's a lull in our conversation, and all of a sudden Wayne just goes, Baptists drink beer at a ski mask.
Character, man.
And I just fell out. It was hilarious. But
the people on that wall, when you sit in there, and you got the SEC commissioner, and Roy Kramer and I were close. I wasn't that close to the Slive.
Yeah.
But Mike's got his own little booth there. It's got his picture. It's got his name on the booth. So there's a history of that place with the SEC, and it's got coaches all over the wall. So when you walk in there, I mean, you feel like you're walking back in time.
Oh man, great food too.
Yeah.
And I love
best hamburger. By the way, Salem's hamburger, great place.
check it out.
Yeah.
So I want to start out talking about CoachSafely. What a unique thing that y'all have done, and tell us how that got started.
Accidentally, in my background, I had a sabbatical out of coaching after I came back from the other side of the Mississippi River. Coached at Baylor last. I wasn't going to coach again. Got into private business, and then it just still didn't get me back to Birmingham. So Dr. Andrews, who was my doctor at Livingston in 1975, I'm the first coach he ever had. He's the first doctor I ever had. He's got an institute, the American Sports Medicine Institute, and he asked me to come run it. And that really did fit me. I have a pre-med degree. Jimmy and I, we have science in common, just talking about injuries and science. And so during that couple of years there, before I go to Jacksonville State, it's hard to stay away from coaching. Was there 13 years and said I'd never coach again. Just Saban, don't do this. Look at Belichick.
Right.
I don't think you could regenerate these things.
It's a strong pull, no doubt.
It is. But what happened and how this got to be CoachSafely is Jimmy and I had developed this dialogue about how many things he were looking at could have been prevented if the coach had just managed the wear and tear on an athlete better. Plus, I had a really couple of traumatic experiences. I don't know if you remember, but 1983, when we reported Greg Pratt was our fullback, died right there in front of us from a heat illness. I had a couple of other tragedies, that were associated. One was a concussion. One was a unrecognized emotional state that ended up being a suicide. These things, they don't leave. These are people, things that were close. And so I ended up my name ended up becoming associated with a few things to the point where I became, just out of nowhere, the state of Kentucky's expert witness in a trial from Louisville, Kentucky. A high school coach was being charged with wrongful death and the death of a player. Max Gilpin's his name, big old offensive tackle. And I'm still coaching at Jacksonville at the time. But I was put in front of the full Kentucky legislature and asked questions related to them being sued by these parents along with the coach. And that got some traction. I was really afraid of it because, heck, I recruited Kentucky. I don't, this is coming at this like I'm not pro coach. That wasn't really good. And I was able to get my message across. And the message was primarily he didn't violate a duty of care, because there is no duty of care. Here's a coach that doesn't have a standard, and there's plausible deniability. Maybe he didn't know any different. Well, I'm here to tell you, heat illness is 100% preventable. You can prevent that. So the bottom line is, for a legal situation, was it preventable, and what's the process? And so I got out of that quickly. But the next thing I do is I get a call from Time Warner in January of 2013. I mean, I'm 3 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks from retiring out of coaching. Jimmy and I are talking about maybe what I'm going to do next. I want to do something with Jimmy. Jimmy and Dr. Andrews, we're just close that way. And I get this call from Time Warner asking me if I would be with Soledad O'Brien to respond to the president's comment that if he had sons, he'd think seriously about not letting them play football or something.
I remember that comment. Yeah.
And that came out on Sunday. And on Monday, I was with Soledad O'Brien responding to the President of the United States. Now, the ripple in Kentucky was one thing. It tied back to me being the executive director of the American Sports Medicine Institute. Those two things rippled into me, all just really being presented as the expert to talk about what the president was alluding to, which was the risk of football. And at that point in time, I became a national consultant, not because I was trying to be, just because, okay, there's somebody I've testified before Congress twice at this point, on behalf of the former Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. David Satcher. So all of a sudden, I'm not picking this path, and it's a rocket. And then finally, after I've spent a few years seeing what policy really means, I'm like you, because you said it before we got on here, I don't want to be involved in politics. I used to just look at the NCAA. How can you make these silly policies? I mean, they're so not connected to NIL's finally shown what we were trying to tell them the whole time. If you don't let us take care of these kids, it's going to come back on all of us. You're going to make us cheat. And, finally I got saddled up with a couple of people, Dr. David Satcher and Kate Carr, who at the time was the head of Safe Kids. If you ever heard of Safe Kids, they're in every children's hospital in the country. And they said, the only way to really move this ball is go state by state, create a law. I never forget sitting with both of them at a table in Washington, D.C. I mean, see how that works. Because I was ready to get back to Alabama. At least they got me off the road. So that's a long answer.
So here we are.
That's how I got here.
The quote, and I'm sure you've probably seen this movie, Remember the Titans, and water is for the weak.
Yeah.
And I grew up in that era. I wasn't a football player. I was a basketball player, a baseball player. But I mean, that was kind of an afterthought.
Yeah.
So how has the thinking about that evolved through coaching circles across the years?
And the other one is just take this smelling sauce and get back in there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Slap them on the fanny and let's go.
So what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And I was as bad as there was now. I mean, you looked at where I've coached and what the temperament. I mean, I've been associated with 11 championships, mostly because we were just tougher than everybody. Yeah, we had some great players, but we treated our players tougher than most people.
But as a coach, you're sitting there going, okay, what is that line? I want to push them, and so there's this desire to push and challenge. There's a line.
And it's not that you're not aware, because you do care about the kids.
Yes.
But you're not programmed in all the ways to really know where the line is, because you're absolutely, and did we overdo it? Oh, Tuesdays at Auburn with Coach Dye, we cross the line every Tuesday in every way. But you get down to the fourth quarter against those football teams, you were toast.
Hard to handle.
You were toast, because we weren't afraid of death.
Yeah.
Those teams weren't. Because they felt like they survived every Tuesday, because that's what we made them feel like. And, that is the means that we're looking at on Saturday when we watch college football. Who is the toughest? Hey, Alabama, Florida State. Alabama wasn't tough. Florida State was. Now, what have they done since then? They look pretty goddamn tough here lately. Mm-hmm. How do you find that line? And if you don't push do you push to it or do you back up a little bit? And your biggest fear is you're not going to push them enough, which tends you to over push them. Bill Clark, who's our president, really, as I've gotten to know Bill and what he did at UAB, I thought he was he's the best I've ever seen, quite honestly, at making a really tough football team and knowing where the line was. I just observed. He didn't talk to me about it. He's raised by a coach. He's 100% coach. I'm not sure the people that came out of the Coach Bryant world, which is where I came from indirectly. I think that line was. I mean, the idea is we're going to make sure we're going to get it because we're going to be past it. Mm-hmm. Coach Bryant, I think, like in 1964, he didn't even let his team practice in pads a whole year, so he had the ability to go both ways. Ray Perkins told me that story because he was a captain on that team. Mm-hmm. But I think every coach has got to know who he's coaching, know where the line is. Is the line the same with every player? There's a word that I've started using called physical literacy. What's good for this one in creating his toughness, not necessarily good for this one. And we talk about 14 and under. Just how do you develop the concept of 14 and under? It's different. And it is more mental than it is physical, to be honest with you. You ask a really serious question for me right there, because that one's the one I've rethought. When I meet a former player, and I'm coached 40 years, I apologize and say, you're not carrying around something, are you? Now, quite honestly, no one has never told me that I have. Like my quarterback at Auburn, Randy Campbell, I'm still looking for signs. I can tell you how many times I just pushed him over the edge. Yeah. And I don't see dementia, and I don't see limping, and
well, my wife says something really good when I start to kind of doubt and question myself like that, because I've had some thoughts about that before in my life. And she said, we can only walk in the light that we've been given.
Yeah.
And I just, that kind of gives me a little bit of rest.
I remember that one.
That's a good one. But let's talk about sort of the mission and how y'all kind of implement that. So what y'all do is y'all are trying to train coaches about preventable injuries in kids that are younger, 14 and younger, right? And so how do you sort of implement that?
Well, we acknowledge the fact that a volunteer coach is anything. It's a aerospace engineer in Huntsville that wants to coach his kids, but it's a carpenter in Elba. So just how wide is this? So, I mean, you have really got to be universal in what you're trying to do. And then you become universal, because we're not talking about football, even though that's where the conversation always goes. We're not talking about football. Cheerleading is more dangerous than football if you're going to throw them up in the air. And so risk, people want to make football the conversation, but 11-year-old little girl, somebody will say, well, I don't believe that. Well, you know what? You believe what you want to, but you're wrong. 11-year-old little girl playing soccer is going to have more risk of concussion than 11-year-old little boy playing tackle football, because they fall a lot and the ground causes most concussions. So, you try to just understand the universalness of what you're trying to do, the kind of people that are coaching, the different sports, and all of the injuries in here. The number one injury is overuse. And it's serious, because it can create orthopedic problems the rest of your life. I mean, the one that pops up is baseball arms. Dr. Andrews created the pitch count for Little League Baseball during the time I was there with him, just to give people a standard. Mm-hmm. You don't start them and throw 60 pitches one day apart, and they're 12 years old, which coaches will do over and over because if they got a good one, they probably only got one. They go to these tournaments, it's just set up to happen. Next thing you know, some guy's a sophomore in high school and he's done. He's not done because of what happened in high school. He's done to what he was doing when he was 11 years old. And so the universalness of this was really the challenge of it. How can we tie all this together? Because policy has to have this, this generalness.
But let's say, for instance, that I'm a coach and I'm a volunteer coach in the city of Jasper. That was kind of the first city to adopt, which we're proud of. They were. How do you take part in a training program? Is that something that you do online?
It's online. I mean, the parameters for this to get the law passed is the content valid, and it's peer reviewed, evidence based. Here's a good word for you. Is it pedagogically sound? Is it presented in a way that affects behavior, efficacy? Does it give the behavioral result, that outcome that you expect it to have? So you're shaping the pedagogy of this, the words that are actually measured in here, because you've got multiple topics, and yet this could be 6 hours long. Not practical. So we got it down under an hour. And you got 11 modules. They're 3 to 5 minutes. Now, to be certifiable, you got to answer questions. Each one of those modules is followed by 5 questions. If you don't get them right, it'll kick you back. But it's made to pass. We have done, Dr. White at Stanford University is the Center of Data Analytics, one of the most outstanding in the country, has done surveys of coaches that have taken this course, and 85% of them, some high number like that, maybe 90, said it actually, they agreed it changed some part of how they coached, and they felt like after taking the course that they had a better perspective, as you say, where the lines are, because there's no better way to say this. Where's the line? Here's one for you. What is it that would actually cause you, if a kid had a head hit the ground, or a head hit another head, or he ran into a post, for you to actually remove that child from play? Because let me tell you something. If something started and you left him in there, he got hit again, it may be a brain bleed. It's usually a second impact that causes a tragedy, which means that the first sign, if you do the right thing, you're probably just a matter of days from being okay. But you don't create neurological disturbances and then come in and hit it again.
But if the coach takes the course, that does give them that immunity from anything that might happen.
Well, here's the point of the immunity of it. I mean, to know it, but is your behavior consistent by it? And, there's always some deposition, if you want to call it that, around it. You're a lawyer. You have a standard, but the behavior has to match the standard. The course creates a standard.
Does this apply only to football, or does it apply to basketball?
That's every sport.
Okay.
It's every sport. Like I said, if we're not touching soccer, we're not touching the world, because at the youth level, soccer is the biggest sport. Baseball comes next. I mean, football's, literally there's 60,000 coaches, we predict. Now, maybe a low number, but just extrapolating recognized data, 60,000 coaches in the state of Alabama. Over the last 5 years, we've trained 75,000, but we really had to get this to another level to get it. I mean, Walker County, I can give you a list right now how many was trained yesterday. I get the data every morning. But there were dead spots. There were just spots that the message didn't get out, and promulgation is what you call it. Mm-hmm. The law just hasn't reached everywhere. And in our most recent effort, we're going to work with the Department of Public Health, who's the regulator, make sure everybody gets this message.
What's the future of football?
In some places, it's hotter than ever. One of the One of the places that we found, or they found us, that we take care of is in Gwinnett County, Georgia. It's the largest tackle football youth league in the country. Gwinnett Youth Football. Massive. We train 1,000 coaches and cheerlead coaches of theirs every year now. 1,000 means how many kids they got playing. So we're able to see what their growth is. In places like that, in suburban, highly competitive areas like that, the numbers are higher than they've ever been. Now you start going to Oakman, I'll tell you their numbers are significantly down. I guess people know where Oakman is.
I certainly do. Yeah, participation is not very high.
No.
Yeah.
No, I think there are some places where it spikes, but if you were to say demographically, I think the game is in decline. I think parents are afraid of the game. Listen, I got a grandson and a very sharp daughter-in-law, and she looked at me and said, "I don't know, Pop." Because he looks like could be a great player, but I don't know if she's ever going to let him out there.
Coach, my son, and he is 7 years old, and he's like 4'3". I mean, he is huge, big body kid.
Look at your genes.
Well, yeah, and so I mean, I'm just thinking like he is going to be a tight end.
Yeah.
And this year, before we got started with football, he was like, "I want to play tackle." He just kept on. I want to play tackle.
There you go, Dad.
Well, but we started.
What did Mom say?
Well, we started to kind of inquire. I mean, we reached out to a couple people that we knew that had been football coaches, and both of them said it's too early. Wait, just play flag until he gets to middle school, and then.
You got the best advice.
And so that's what we did. And so we're playing flag, and
I'll add how I answered that question. I didn't say till you get to junior high.
Yeah.
I said when the coaches that are coaching you are being paid, you can play, because I knew what the volatility and vulnerability of a volunteer coaching could be. I mean, Spurrier told me this story one time that he dropped his oldest son off, who's a coach now. And he wasn't going to walk out there because he's Steve Spurrier, and this is when he's coaching at Gainesville. And he said, but I just had to see what they did. He said, so I found a place to go park where they couldn't see me. And I watched him practice, and then I picked him up after it was over with. And when he got in the car, I said, that's the last practice you're going to be at.
As I was preparing for this interview, a name that came up, and I didn't know this guy at all, but Drew Ferguson.
Yeah.
I want to know a little bit more about him as a person.
A little special.
Yeah.
And he recognizes probably the unrecognizable, and their role in all this is athletic trainers. Because I coached 2 years of high school football. We did at Oxford, 71 to 72. I had a pre-med degree. I was an offensive coordinator, but I was a trainer too. We didn't have a trainer. I taped the ankles. I handled the ice bags. And when you played, your coaches were your trainers probably.
Pretty much, yeah.
Now, when I got to college, my athletic trainer has been nationally recognized since that time as the leader in the NAT national. And my doctor was Jimmy Andrews. Now, to say I have been taken care of by the best, R.T. Floyd was his name, but R.T. is part of a generation of people that are athletic trainers. And I can tell you, if Nick was sitting here, or anybody, the first call they're going to make and the last call they're going to make is to their athletic trainer. Mm-hmm. And that's what Drew represented. He was Gene Bartow. He was Vince Dooley's assistant athletic trainer in Georgia, coming out of where he came out of Georgia. He grew up in Georgia. Mm-hmm. And then when Gene Bartow got to looking around, started the athletic program at UAB, and Gene knew how to go get the best of everything now. He wasn't a small timer. And so somehow he finds out about Drew and hires Drew. But Drew and his role for athletic trainers, he started the athletic trainer certification that every athletic trainer has to be certified by in the state of Alabama. And he was legendary. He was anybody that knew anything about football in the state. If you wanted an athletic trainer, or if somebody wanted to be an athletic trainer, their first call was to Drew. Mm-hmm. And so when I decided I was coming to the state to pass a law, I did the preliminary work on writing a law, but I went to see Drew. I said, Drew, will you help me get this law passed? Now, I hadn't been up and down the hallways of a legislature to get something done before. He had. I mean, he deserves more than a 50-50 credit for getting this law passed, because, I mean, he knew what the issues were. And Drew recently passed, and it was a great loss, I'll be honest with you. We have other people, Ron Corson, who was at the university. It seemed like we're going back to Georgia to get our people, but Ron Corson, who for 30 years was the athletic trainer at Georgia, is on our board, and we have athletic trainers just networked everywhere. And Dr. Andrews will tell you that every doctor that's covering the team at the highest level, his best communication, not with the head coach, is with the athletic trainer. If I'm standing there over a kid on the field, and I get the athletic trainer standing here, and I got Jimmy Andrews, I'm going to go ahead and embarrass Jimmy. And I had Lyle King. Lyle King was my doc at Jack State. And I had my athletic trainer, whose name was Jim Skidmore. I knew they were going to ask him, so I didn't talk to Lyle. I say, Skid, what we got here?
Yeah.
I mean, that guy just knew. He just knew. I mean, he was on the practical side. Well, I think we need to get him out of here, or concussion or whatever. So he represented a domain of people that every organization, when the kid up at Buffalo got that hit and was dead on the field.
Yeah, Damar Hamlin.
Yeah. That wasn't a doctor that went out there and fixed that, by the way. I think the doctor probably took credit. It was an athletic trainer that went out there and got that straightened out. And that's who we all look to.
Yeah.
Is that those people, I think it is an unrecognized. Here's one for you. So Bo Jackson wins the Heisman the last year I'm at Auburn. He goes up there, he gets that trophy. He brings the trophy back. He don't take it to his mom. He don't give it to Coach Dye. He puts it on the athletic trainer's desk, and it stays there for 2 months.
Wow.
Now, what does that tell you? He knew who Kevin played.
Yeah. That means a lot.
Yeah.
So what are some things that y'all have got cooking with the organization kind of moving forward? Y'all have got a lot going on.
Well, what we got going on now is stepping up to being more highly involved with the coach on a professional development piece. And, I'm the policy side. I was a coach, and, I've won a lot of games. But Bill Clark is a guy right now that's leading who we are, what our message is. I'm just going to, go to the policy side. We'll get this law passed in 3 more states next year and 10 more after that. And, it's a different kind of, because you got to raise money and, maneuver and politics.
So you're working a lot with legislators and things like that. So
we introduce ourselves. This is just Jimmy Andrews. He's the doctor. This is Bill Clark. He's the coach. And here's Jack Crowe. He's the politician.
Which you didn't want to get into.
Which I cussed. But here's what Dr. Satcher said to me one time. He says, Jack, you're probably going to have some policy here. I said, I hate politics. He says, you want to change something?
Yeah.
You want to talk about it, or you want to change it?
Well, if y'all fly me out, I'll be the basketball guy. If y'all take care of my meals and hotel and lodging.
Well, this 501, this work that we're starting to break into its own mold, that's exactly what it's going to do. It's going to bring the people like Kirby, Nick, the people that did our first PSAs were Nick Saban and Bruce
Pearl.
Yeah. And so, we're able to attract highest profile people in a state because they know what the problem is. Mm-hmm. They're afraid to let their grandchildren. I tell you what, ask Bruce if he trusts putting his grandson out there and with these people.
But do you see more of that with football, though? That apprehensiveness about that's a word, about
maybe.
Are you seeing that with basketball?
Well,
are you seeing that with baseball?
Well, you're seeing it probably more intensely in football. But I think it becomes even more prevalent when you have leaders who become grandparents.
See, I have no problem putting my son in baseball at all, but I have a big problem putting my son in tackle football.
Well,
to that
part
point.
of this is I don't think we fully recognize how many things can go wrong in a baseball game. I mean, it's not a collision sport.
Well, that's the thing. When you think about injury, baseball is probably the number one right now. When you think about Tommy John, just the way they just tweak a hammy, and I mean, But I never got injured when I was a kid.
The soft tissue injuries are the most prevalent. And basketball is wrought with soft tissue injuries. I mean, NBA right now, they're running around with markers all over their bodies, and the minute they get to a certain measurable, they set them down.
Are we injured more now? I mean,
that was a very good question, and one that I was constantly asked and couldn't answer until one time I was at a Aspen Institute. Have you ever heard of them? It was a round table discussion, and the person sitting next to me.
I'm actually the chairman of the board on that, so I'm kidding. But go ahead. No, but yes, I've heard of it.
So I got Dr. Michelle Labatt sitting there, who happens to be on the board, and significantly so, of the American Association of Pediatrics, AAP. I guess I got the A's right. And the question came up, and I just looked over at Dr. Labatt. I said, Michelle, are these kids just not as tough as they used to be? And she said, well, it's a matter of literacy. And when you spend all your time on a screen and in air conditioning, these are not the same. These are not This is not a level of literacy that we can compare to even to 15 years ago. Yes, they're more vulnerable. That's the answer. Because what you got out of climbing a tree, I don't know what you ever got at your house, but if you ever got at your house, I don't know how old you have to be. When your mom sometimes said, just get out of here and I'll let you know. Get out of the house, stay out of the house, I'll let you know when it's time for dinner. And a lot of people have that conversation, which means what are you? You're out in the heat, you're climbing a tree, you're playing pickup baseball. But that creates a climatization. It creates a point of use with your muscles. But if you're sitting there on that screen, I mean, right now, the biggest problem in Alabama, I mean, I go to Robert Kennedy right now. He's bringing it up. I mean, we're the worst. We got the worst chronic disease anywhere in the country. We say we've been cutting back diabetes, and we spent billions of dollars, and it keeps doing this.
I really think that we're hitting right now on the core of there's a huge issue. See,
we're getting into politics this year.
But I don't know what your faith is, but I mean, like I believe.
I have a strong faith.
I believe that when you get away from the way the Lord designed things, you get away from that.
Yeah.
And you start doing things that are artificial, and start doing things that like we're meant to get outside.
Absolutely.
We're meant to climb a tree.
Yeah.
We're meant to be out and putting our feet in the grass. We're meant to be in God's creation, and when we start doing things that are against that and outside of that, it creates this culture in our life, and so
it's not healthy. I can tell you that.
Sitting there on a screen, looking at a screen, whether that be an iPad or be a cell phone, and adults do it too, it's just not good for us to just sit there and not move. Like I've talked about this a lot in my podcast, just moving. Like we're meant to move. We're meant to get outside.
You have to have organized play, just free play. One thing in Alabama that we've done better than most is we have kept a requirement to have physical education in school's curriculum. But it's about 30 minutes. But they do have it just about every school system. It's still not an hour. And it still needs other, there needs to be other opportunities. But when you get into a rural area, organized sports is not around every corner. I mean, it's not like, being in suburbia here in Birmingham. You got an opportunity around every corner But I tell you what's happening too now. We're getting into some down low stuff.
We're gonna get deep here now.
Because every time you look up, the opportunity is costing more and more money. I mean, the average registration fee, well, there has to be some really high numbers to balance out, because we know this does not even sound reasonable, but this is recognized. The average registration fee for a child in youth sports is $662 a sport.
Wow.
That's ridiculous. And between the price points and the availability, you really denied a significant and more vulnerable population the opportunity to have the right to play, because kids, we used to just run into each other under a light at the end of the street and play for 45 minutes.
Here we go. Yeah.
Where do they even come together, even for free play, to get started? Now, will kids do it? If you put 5 kids in one spot for 10 minutes, they're going to start playing. So it's natural. I mean, what have we done to become unnatural? Well, screen, start with.
Absolutely.
But the thing is, we become isolated with our, and now the people that used to YMCAs and Boys and Girls Clubs, they're being pushed out of sports. Sports has become highly privatized because there is enormous money to be made in sports.
But let's go back to PE for a second, because even if you've got a PE program at a school, and even if it's 30 minutes, what does that look like in a lot of instances? A bunch of people sitting over the bleachers, laying down in the bleachers. Kids, they're not. There's no program. And I'm not saying that to be ugly toward anybody.
Well, now
that's the reality of what that is.
We talked about athletic trainers, undervalued, underappreciated, a declining population because it doesn't have a high recognized professionalism about it. What about PE teachers? How professional how meaningful can a dynamic person in the PE department help in an elementary school? Arguably, they could be as important as any teacher, or more important than any teacher in that school, just to make sure there is structure, there is a mission every day you come out there. Because when you have a PE class, but what you see is just kids sitting in the stands, that's somebody's fault. That's not what the state says that class is supposed to be. Now, we have a very organized state. Eric Mackey is the superintendent of schools, and Eric and I have talked about this. Eric was one of the biggest. First check we got that meant anything was from the Department of Education, because Eric Mackey said he had never sent that much money to what was a brand new 501c, $200,000, because he said we got to do something. He says, and the other thing he said, I can't tell you how many kids are missing school because they get hurt in youth sports, but I know it's a big number. I said, well, you know what they say the number is? 10 million absentees a year. And that's probably supposedly a low number. He said, well, I can do this just to eliminate absenteeism in Alabama. So you got a lot of people that are looking at a population, how much school are they missing? Mentally, how different are they because they don't have any activity? I'm a chemist. There are things that go on in your brain when you exercise that don't happen if you don't exercise. And those things are considered to be very positive in brain development.
It's mental and emotional and psychological.
It all fits.
Coach, some of my fondest memories of elementary school was playing PE. It was we used to have this game. We used to have this game in Jasper at Memorial Park Elementary called Bombardment. It was basically dodgeball, but we called it Bombardment, which kind of elevated the stakes a little bit. And then we had this other game called Burn Ball. And it was kind of like baseball, but you played it inside with like a wiffle ball. But I mean, like, man, we had wars, and
how good was it? The boys and girls had to come together, but you could all play kickball. How good was that?
Yeah, of course. And there were other games that we played that probably don't need to be mentioned here, but just being able to compete and being able to have a very robust PE it enriched my childhood. It and I think it helped me. Maybe going back to your point, maybe the reason why I wasn't injured, I had a couple sprained ankles when I was playing for Coach Phil Schumacher at Walker High School. Yeah. But for the most part, I was not injured, and maybe that had to do with the fact that we had a really strong PE department at the elementary school.
I think that, let's bring the science in behind this. But anecdotal really is just proving what you already know. Yeah. And I think we'd have to say this probably could be proven. Yeah. I just think that if people will just think, if you had 3 kids together and they just started playing, doesn't matter what it is, and you look at that child's face, there's something there that you won't see on that child's face, probably in anything else he does in his daily activity. Call it fun, whatever you want to call it. Sports has been here since the culture began for a reason, and because it has value. And whenever you don't, I live in Birmingham. I watch Channel 13 pretty regular, and I say, okay, let's see how many people got murdered. Because that's the first thing you're going to do is talking about how many people are murdered. And inevitably reminds me of this kid because they're youth murderers, or they're a disturbed mental health that probably started at youth. Where was their physical activity? Where was the leadership of a community coach in that person's life? Because sports has the capacity to affect cultures in so many positive ways, but it has to start down here. It's not high school. I used to hear, well, you're in the coaching business, you develop character. Are you kidding with a college kid? He's 18, I'm going to start working on his character. I expose character. Mm-hmm. That's done way back there. In fact, I've come to believe that you either have what you are by the time you're 12, or you're working on changing something you can't change. There's a poem that says the 12-year-old's the father of the man. I've always believed that. So what I do is just try to find out how they were raised, what the community was like. Saban was really good at this. Mm-hmm. You got to pick the right people, mm-hmm. not just the height, weight, and speed.
My wife would definitely tell you there's a lot of 12-year-old in me. So
it's still the best. It's still the best part.
And I was going to talk about growing up in West End and all that kind of stuff, but I really feel like I need to get to your coaching career and obviously you were at Livingston, and one of the greatest graduates from there, I think he graduated, was Big Al Blanton back in the early 70s, but that was a little bit before your time. I don't think he went to class, but
I was there in '73. So
he was close to.
Yeah, I mean, he was part of the rumors that were going around.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the Teak House burned down, the fraternity that he was in. But, you were an assistant under Coach Dye. Danny Ford, mm-hmm. and Ken Hatfield. So I want you to kind of take those 3 guys individually and talk about coaching styles, your relationship with them. You've got a smile on your face right now because I feel like that
100% completely different, all 3.
Yeah, I mean, what are the similarities and differences between those?
Their own characterization. I will tell you this, and maybe it's just from a time, but I later came to find out, I don't know why this is, but Coach Dye and I, it was like 2 brothers fighting a lot. I mean, people used to say, how do you put up with him on the sideline? And people just saw the games because it looked like we were fighting all the time. But then I later realized hardly anything I did, I didn't think back and say, well, that's just like Coach Dye. In fact, we beat Ole Miss when I was at Jacksonville State, which was a big game. And somebody came in there and taped what I said. Didn't see it, and then some years later, they wanted me to see it, which now you're detached from it emotionally, and it was almost verbatim what Pat Dye would say. And I looked at that, and I'm going, oh, my God, this guy was deeper in my blood than I ever had any idea. Coach Dye stands alone from the other two in that he wasn't a good football coach, and the other two are, I hate to use, but he was a coach's coach. He affected people's lives. He affected my life. He affected how I thought. He affected how I feel. I was there with him 4 years, and they were a formative 4 years for him. They were formative 4 years for Auburn, and they were truly a formative 4 years for me, because who I was when I got there and what I was when I left was two different people. And it probably was a combination of what Auburn was. I mean, Bo Jackson walked. There were just so many dynamic things that were, was around. Danny, on the other hand, was we the same age. And so I thought I was truly working with a peer. And yet Danny had one of the most unique approaches to coaching players. Nobody have I ever seen that really, I mean, he won a national championship when he was 32. And he picked the players. I mean, he just didn't step into it. He built that team for that, and he got it done. And I could see it in him. And the fact of the matter was, he didn't ever want to talk about an X and O. All he wanted to talk about was production, what he was looking at, and how those players were being held accountable. I felt like there was probably more of truly what Coach Bryant was in Danny than there was in Pat. Even though Pat was, he was very much a disciple of Coach Bryant. Danny, I was there 3 years. We won 3 conference championships. And when we walked out on the field, 80% of the time, they knew they were beat. Good team. North Carolina, they knew they were going to get beat when we walked out there. In the time I was there, we played Barry Switzer and Joe Paterno, and physically whipped the hell out of both of them. That was Danny. Mm-hmm. Ken Hatfield, he probably had more impact on my career because he literally set me up to be the head coach at Arkansas without intending to do that. And Ken was just wise. He would say things that I'd later reflect on that just became just pure wisdom. Like, you know what, Jack, there's 2 ways to have it. We don't have the advantage in players. And he never tried to micromanage me. I was the offensive coordinator. He says, but I know we can have an advantage. If we're not better, we just have to be a little different, but never get away from fundamentals. There's some wisdom in that, So you find the most subtle ways to be different. Mm-hmm. And I think that year we set every record, offensive record at Arkansas. It's the reason they made me the head coach. And I just lived with that wisdom. And it's, he'd walk into the locker room after practice and want to have a discussion about something he saw. And I'd say, well, we're going to make that a little different. And he, it was just a connection that he and I had. He just wise.
You said an interesting thing. You said Di impacted the way you thought.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Pat understood how to get to the fourth quarter in a position to win, and really made everything about the fourth quarter. And that goes back to Coach Bryant too, by the way. But he knew how to get them to that place. And it started in January, and it started with discipline. And it started by, I used to say this about Pat in perspective. I've never been with him with a team on a Sunday night or halftime in Knoxville, Tennessee, that he didn't have every one of them's heart in his hand. Ain't nobody else I've ever seen could do that. Literally, his words were just magical to those guys. It wasn't so much with me as a coach as it was to watching how you got that out of a football team. Because if we got in a fight, we were going to fight you harder, longer. Mm-hmm. Just because they believed in him. I mean, they were fighting for him. I mean, fight for Auburn, but man, he just, we want to, in hindsight, they've made it the national, recognize it as a 1983 team as national champion. And we lost Greg Pratt. First day we reported. How do you handle that? Bring those players into that situation. We lose to Texas. It's just every time we were down, he could bring us back. And we were down a lot, really. You never know until you go back and look. But I think on the emotional scale of what it takes to win, which is your players playing together, playing hard, I mean, that was formative for me to see how he did that. And he did it, with his, if you had a player that you felt like maybe wasn't getting it, next thing you know, you'd see him walking in and out of Pat's office. And it's fixed. I mean, he knew them. He knew how they were thinking. He knew how to get out of them. I mean, I tell you, Bo he didn't like practice. He was really a
So that's true.
Oh, Lord. If he didn't manage Bo, I mean, on a personal level, manage Bo. I mean, if you were to ask Bo who's the most important man in his life, do you even question who he's going to say? I don't.
See, people that are not in coaching, they don't understand. It's not. Yes, it is about the players. It is about getting great players. But you've got to manage those players. But you've also got to manage them psychologically as well. It's not just about, hey, let's roll the ball out there and we'll win a national championship. It's getting them on the same page, getting them to buy into the culture, working with them right here, have the right mindset. And Dobb was a master at that.
He was. And Nick said it when he walked away. People didn't want to take exactly what he said. I've talked to Terry about this, and we just don't have anything to offer these kids anymore. Because they all love and believe in, you always got degrees of big statements, but, some coaches got that, and I carried that a little bit. I don't know if I was ever as good as the master was, and Coach Dow was the master. I think that's what he got from Coach Bryant. I think Coach Bryant was the same way. I didn't know Coach Bryant like that, so I couldn't say. But those are three Hall of Fame coaches. But I think they all are in the Hall of Fame. Really, surely Ken Hatfield is. If he isn't, he ought to be. But uniquely, everybody has their unique gifts, and those three guys. If somebody say, what success I did have, how do you, it's always who put you there. Pat and Di put me there. What I'm doing right now, I mean, Satcher put this in my head. Jimmy Andrews put this in my head. There's always somebody, and you ought to give them credit, because if you really look at it, there's a reason you do what you do. Where'd you get that reason? Mm-hmm. Follow the right people.
But you did have incredible players at Auburn. I mean, Bo Jackson, Ben Pambarello, Brent Fullwood, Larry Tillman, Tommy Agee, Randy Campbell. I mean, the list can go on and on.
Well, a strange thing about it was, you had guys like Greg Carr who had one scholarship offer. And we had a field full of guys that was the only scholarship. Randy Campbell, he would have gone to Alabama if he had a chance to go to Alabama. But I think you're looking right now at some people that are going to fall out of today's top 25. It's going to come down to heart somewhere in here, and that comes down to not whether you're a 5-star. I personally could just. You told me, here's this team full of 5-stars. You want to come coach them? I can't do nothing for them. Mm-hmm. And I don't, the most gifted ones on that 1983 team were the ones that were already there when we got there. Bo Jackson had something to do with it. But the people that made the heart and soul of that team, we inherited, and Coach Dye just won them over, and they became Coach Dye's most fierce warriors. Mm-hmm. Randy Campbell's and the Greg Carrs and list of them. Mm-hmm. David Jordan, Ed West. I mean, the guys. Now, did we add some pretty good backs to that backfield? Yeah, Tommy Agee and Bo Jackson, but Lionel James was probably the best player we had. Everybody kept saying, "Oh, he ain't big enough to play." Well, really? Okay, I don't care how big he is. He's the best. And also, I've said this to Bo. 1983, the most dynamic player we had wasn't Bo Jackson. It was Lionel James, and Bo knows it. Wow. And he was already there.
You know, I'm interested in football at the University of Arkansas. Yeah. You know, it's a very unique place.
Precious place to me.
What was that like? Because I mean, you've got Razorback Stadium, you've got War Memorial, you've got a fan base that cares. What was it like coaching?
You got the governor leading the cheers in Little Rock.
Yeah,
Clinton.
Yeah.
Standing up and leading the cheers. Now,
Clinton's involved. I didn't even prepare for Clinton here. We got a whole segment.
How many states can pull that off?
Yeah.
And I mean, he would tell you, he'd call the Hogs in public.
Did you talk to him a lot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was the thing about that place.
Jack,
I didn't know who the richest man in the world was in 1990, but he walked in the door and said, "I just want to meet you, Coach." Sam Walton.
Wow.
Come on now. Don Tyson. I mean, these are the most dynamic business people in the world doing things. And all they want to do is just be part of what those Hogs are doing.
Yeah.
And there ain't no place like Arkansas, I'll be honest with you. I had one bad day. I mean, I was honored, thrilled, overwhelmed, quite honestly. And I was there at a time where changes were happening that I didn't control those changes. And they weren't changes that were going to give us more wins, I can tell you that.
Yeah. You go back.
I coached the last conference championship team at Arkansas.
You go back to that. There's such a rich tradition, and I don't know if you've seen the Dallas Cowboys. I know you know Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Dallas Cowboys documentary?
Well, I was told by everybody else. Tell me what you think.
Yeah.
And I watched the first one, and I know Jerry, I know Barry Switzer, I know Jimmy Johnson, I know all those guys because they are more Hog than they are anything else.
Yeah.
And so, but those are how dynamic the people are that I met while I was there. I mean, Barry used to just come knock on the door and come sit in my office, and he was just proud to be in that guy. And this is after he's left Oklahoma.
Well, and then you got Jimmy Johnson. I mean, like those three. I mean, Jones, Switzer, Johnson. Have you gotten to know Jimmy Johnson well?
When I got the job, I called Jimmy and I said, "Jimmy, I don't know anything about coaching on the side of the Mississippi River. Help me." And he said, "You got me anytime. What you need?" I said, "Well, I need to hire somebody that can recruit, somebody that has your background, somebody you might know. I got to hire somebody can go recruit Texas." And he says, "I got one. I should have brought him to Miami. His name's Houston Nutt." "Okay, Jimmy." And I just took that one and hired him because he didn't have much of a job when I hired him.
Yeah.
And so he was always there for me. Always. And so was Jerry.
Jones is a very complex character, but both of those guys are, and Switzer too. I mean, and again, you watch a documentary.
Complex is an understatement.
It is, but I wrote about this. So my best friend got married in Montecito, California, in 2013. I think that's right.
Yeah.
And we went out there for the wedding, and we were. After the wedding, my cousin and I were hanging out, and we looked outside the place we were at, and the Cowboys bus was out there. And so I inquired about who was there. I said,
camp out there.
And they had camp out there. And so next thing I know, here comes Jerry Jones walking right at me.
Yeah.
Could not have been nicer.
Oh, great guy.
Like, could not have. I mean, it was like, sometimes when you meet somebody that's of that magnitude, they're kind of trying to get to the next place. He sat there and talked to me. He was so nice. And
so he is always.
And it just, you've got this like public persona of who he is. But from your standpoint,
same thing, always. Yeah. I mean, he bought the Cowboys about the time I became the head coach. And, he called me one day and said, "Hey, Jack, I know you're going to be down there in the spring recruiting. We just moved into Valley Ranch. I want you to come out here. Let me show you this place."
So he invited you out.
Oh, and I went down there, and I was a pig in slop, man, showing me that building.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he said, "Whatever I can do to help you," I said, "You can help me."
Yeah.
And Barry said the same thing. I think Jimmy did too.
Well, obviously, one of the big parts of your life was being the head coach at Jacksonville State, and you were there for
the longest
13 years. Yeah. 13 years, and so what were kind of the things about that experience, or the moments that you'll remember?
I remember I turned a job down twice. Told them why they weren't winning. Told them I didn't see any evidence that they could ever. That won a national championship in 1992, and then they jumped up to FCS, which required more of everything, and yet they weren't willing to change anything. And I had Larry Blakeney at Troy, who they had made that change very well. And Larry and I were very close. And I had Oval James, who was athletic director at Chattanooga. And I went, the guy that really negotiated me finally in doing it was Jim Folsom, who was the chairman of the board. One of the chairmen, Jim Bennett was the chairman. He was the head of athletic committee, but he was lieutenant governor at the time, so he had a big stick. And he called me when they were looking for a coach, and I said, "Hey, Jim," and I met with Jim, and I had socialized a little bit before. We had a common friend. And I just said, "There ain't no way. Let me help you find somebody." He just would not go away. And finally, people talk about what Saban was given to turn that program around on a comparable scale. I was given, but you know what? None of it was in writing. It was just, "Jim, you call me." Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what. For the next 10 years, if there was something that I had problems with, I'd call Jim. Mm. Now, I didn't win a lot of friends doing that at the campus itself because they were the ones that were not going to change. Mm. And then I finally realized that who I hired was the most important thing, but the next thing was to change what that place looked like. And we built a $40-60 million facility. I don't know if you've been there recently, but the one thing I'll say, if every place I've been, I can say when I left, it was better than I found it. Mm-hmm. The place was better than I found it when I left. If for no other reason, there was nobody that wouldn't give that place consideration with what was done to that infrastructure. And Jim Folsom, I told him, I said, "Nothing's really going to change here until this place looks different." And Jim Bennett, a guy named Red Etheridge, they were all board members. I really was able to influence the board. And the board was 100% in alignment with everything I did. It probably didn't make me very popular with the school administration. They didn't get as much out of the board as I got out of the board. It's a good place to be, but arduous. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we won championships there. We left with the highest winning percentage in the country in our conference. Got a lot of things done. Very proud of it. That's where, when I go to a game, I go to Jackson. I mean, I go to UAB sometimes. I'll go to Auburn for an occasion. But when I want to get a ball fix, I go to Jacksonville. I sit where nobody can see me, and there's more of me on that turf right there than there is any other piece of turf. So I feel like I own part of it.
Yeah. I guess PR and getting exposure for your program is always a challenge when you're not Alabama or Auburn, in the state. How difficult was that for you?
Well, you wanted people to invest, but they invest in a brand, for lack of a better way of saying it. And you've got to perceive that JSU could be different before you could really ever make it different. So, how do you do that? Well, I used to say we'll play anybody anywhere because I knew if we went to play somebody on a big stage, people were going to look at us. Now, we first started doing that, it looked like we couldn't do it. And then towards the end, nobody would play us because they knew they're probably going to be in trouble. Mm-hmm. That we beat Ole Miss now. People were trying to buy their way out of contracts to keep them playing us because we weren't afraid of them. And not that we weren't good enough to beat them, but if you play us and you hiccup twice, you're probably going to be in trouble. Those kids turn around. Basically, Coach Clark was there a year after me, but the team that he and I jointly left there did everything but beat Auburn when they were a really good football team.
There's not as much parity. It's coming a little bit, but there's not as much parity. And I think with NIL and transfer portal, you're getting more of that. But with college basketball, the's a lot more parity. Lord. Now college football, it kind of seems like it's kind of getting there.
But 5 is an easier number to hit.
Yeah. Well,
Davidson, Butler.
Yeah.
When those people started showing up.
Yeah.
1 or 2 players now, it could change. I mean, the best player in the SEC last year was at Morehead. What if there wasn't a transfer portal?
Yeah. Are you seeing that kind of coming up a little bit with this transfer and NIL?
Well, I think the best running back in the country is at Missouri.
Yeah.
Last year he was playing for a friend of mine at Louisiana Monroe because nobody recruited him.
Yeah.
What does that tell you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you look at the quarterbacks in the SEC and the NFL right now, our guy at the Bills, Wyoming, from nowhere.
Maybe the best quarterback on earth right now.
I mean, it just take a good look at the backgrounds, and there, there's some 5 stars out there. Mm-hmm. But, they're out there now.
We got to wrap up, and I do want to say this in conclusion that I've got your tight end. He's 7, but he's going to be a tight end. Just go ahead and mark my word. Joshua Blanton, you get ready for him. He's coming.
You know what? That's how you separate football teams today. There's a lot of people want to spread the field and throw it around. But I don't think there's going to be a legitimate offensive team if you ain't got a legitimate tight end. I mean, the kid was at Georgia a year or so ago. I mean,
Bowers,
Kelsey. I mean, when you put a tight end, a real tight end on a football team, he becomes one of the biggest ways that you can manipulate a defense of any other position. When he's in there and he can block, and he's in there and he can beat a safety out of a cut. Whatever there is. I mean, and talk about Bowers, that's who we're talking about. Do you know the story about how he got from Napa? As big an accident as there was. And that guy is the most dominant one player. Controls more about what a defensive does than any one player in the NFL. Just fell into him. You think he's at Georgia, he was a 5-star, and everybody wanted him at. Go check the story.
Interesting. We've got him. He's coming, but he's
all right. I'll be his agent. How about that? Because I'm sure that about 12 is when the next round of building your agent profile is.
That's right. Well, thank you, Coach. I really enjoyed talking to you, and wish you the best of luck in the future.
Yes, thank you.